It's time for part 11 of the Tailoring Talk James Bondathon, where we follow the James Bond film series in order, ticking off each movie as each month goes by. My guests and I deep dive into each film, covering everything from our overall review to the plot, clothes, gadgets, cast, behind-the-scenes stories, and our favourite moments. Step back into the Tailoring Talk time machine as we head to 1979. We were meant to get For Your Eyes Only, but a little rinky-dink sci-fi movie called Star Wars turned Cubby's head, changed the direction of cinema and the course of the Bond saga as they attempted to cash in on space fever. With me today, Drax wanted to create a master race from the heavens, and no master race would be complete without a sexy voice. From the Play Pause Turn podcast, it's Jon Evans. Jon, how are you?
I'm hoping for some pleasant hunting tonight, Mr. Revilla. Hunting of facts about Bond.
Hunting of facts. Yeah. You might have come to the wrong place. Also, it's like a little Play Pause Turn reunion tonight. Also from the Play Pause Turn podcast. If anyone could persuade Jaws to stop biting people's necks and assist him to foil a plot to destroy humanity, it's our voice of reason, Alex Hansford. Alex, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you, Bobby.
Very good. With your headphones, you look like one of the Moonraker operators, Alex.
Yeah, I do. Very much so.
What would your operator number be?
Oh, good idea. I think it would be 42.
42? Well,
Yeah.
as in, would you be playing a bit of funky bass, like level 42?
No. It's a
Douglas
Hitchhiker's
Adams.
Guide to the Galaxy reference.
Ah, okay, sorry. I'm obviously the weakest of the Play Pause Turn geeks.
Can I mention that?
This is a space one.
I'd be Johnny number 5, wouldn't I? Let's be honest.
Johnny number 5?
Yeah.
From Short Circuit?
Yeah.
Why?
Because my name's John and it's a number.
That's
it. You started this, Bobby.
Yeah, I know. God. I didn't have an icebreaker prepared, you see, so you know I'm improvising. Right. Already this is the worst Bondathon episode to date. We haven't even got started. But before we get started, I must get our spoiler alert in early. This film has been out for just 43 years, but for those of you who haven't seen it, we will be spoiling the living daylights out of this one. So if you haven't seen it, hit pause, go see the movie, and rejoin us after. Moonraker was released in June of 1979 with a runtime of just over 2 hours. I don't know why for a second there, my brain short-circuited because I was actually trying to think back to June 1979. And I obviously don't have any memory of that whatsoever because I was about 18 months old. So yeah. So I don't know what reference I was trying to grab there. Budget of 13. No, hang on. This one had a budget of $30 million.
It was double the previous film, Bobby. Double the previous film.
Double the previous film, and as much as the first 6 Bond films put together. And it grossed over $230 million, which I think makes it the most successful Bond film to date at that time. So Cubby definitely, with the idea that he had to make the biggest, most extravagant Bond film ever, definitely knocked it out of the park. Starring Roger Moore in his 4th outing as James Bond, so almost catching up with Sean Connery. Lois, is it Lois Chiles or Childs? How do you pronounce her surname? Does anyone know?
I think it's Childs.
Oh, Charles. Okay, we'll say Charles. Lois Charles as Dr. Holly Goodhead. Michael Lonsdale as Hugo Drax. Richard Kiel returns as Jaws. Corinne Clary is played by Corinne Dufour. And then Bernard Lee, Desmond Llewellyn and Lois Maxwell return as MQ and Moneypenny. Toshiro Suga is Chang, who's the first henchman of Drax. And then there's some other people in it as well. Dolly is played by Blanche Ravelec. I should probably mention her. And General Gogol's back in this one. Remember General Gogol from, I think it was from You Only Live Twice. But he's back, played by Walter Gottel. Directed by Lewis Gilbert, from a screenplay by Christopher Wood. This was based on the novel of the same name, but because Ian Fleming's books, well, firstly, this was written before they actually managed to put a man on the moon. And it was also written, as very sort of light reading, and there certainly wasn't enough in the books to fill out a film, and certainly not a film of the scope that these guys were cooking up. So, we got what we got. Sorry, people, the World Cup's on at the moment at the time of recording, and I've been a bit distracted. I was trying to do my homework, but then Portugal v Uruguay was on. So, hey, what can I do?
I think
This is I think this is probably the Bond film when I was a little child, because again, I've told stories about my mum just sticking me in front of a television and putting a bootleg VHS on whatever my grandfather had managed to get his hands on at the time. And I think of all the Bond films, Moonraker was the one that I watched the most, and it was because Star Wars was by far and away my most favorite film as a small boy. And this was like the closest thing because it had the space and it had the lasers and all of that stuff. And that's exactly what the producers were sort of hoping for, I guess. John, Moonraker, special place in your childhood? Because I know that this viewing was not the first time you've seen it.
Do you know what, though? I think it was only the second time I've ever seen this film.
Wow.
There's so much of it I didn't remember. I mean, I remember certain amazing bits in it that we will talk about later on, but I think I've only seen this once before, because there's bits of it I have no memory of at all. I would have been 6 when this came out.
Okay, so I would have been 18 months old when this came out. So but I remember the set pieces I remember were definitely the sexy time at the end with the whole re-entry thing.
Possibly the best line in Bond history, I think, that line.
Yeah, exactly. Jaws and his girlfriends, but in space. I don't remember anything about that before. Dolly, sorry. The bit in the centrifuge thing, I remember that. And then obviously all of the space stuff with the astronauts, pew, 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 pew. God knows how that's going to sound in the edit. Alex, how about you?
Well, I was a twinkle in my mum and dad's eye at the time, so I don't think I would have. But I do remember watching it when I was a boy. So it was, I think it had been on at a holiday or something, at Christmas or holiday. Yeah, exactly. And I think it was the first Bond in space, and I don't think you can really beat that. So I think that's why.
No, was it?
It wasn't the first. It wasn't the first Bond in space.
Wasn't
it?
Did
Sean Connery in You Only Live Twice? Did he actually get to space, or was he mainly in the volcano on the ground? Well, I don't think he actually got up there.
It depends what you mean by Bond in space. Do you mean a Bond film with space in it?
Yes. Yes, I do think that Bond in space.
Okay, so bless you, John. So Alex is right. This is the first Bond film where Bond is actually in space, but it isn't the first Bond film that has got space in it.
No, that's true.
Yeah,
but the thing is, you've got Jaws in space, and you've got Jaws' girlfriend, and it's really the Jaws show with Bond, and there's so much in it that's so much fun. So yeah, I think this was one of those things that just sort of indelibly went in my mind, and I think it really had hit sort of a chime somewhere, and I think it's not bad. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it's the start of Bond, but it would have been one of the ones I saw.
Yeah. So speaking of Jaws, opening set piece, which was jaws dropping, and God, that was crap. I mean, it was quite a thrilling sort of opening set piece. So Bond is, well, actually, no, before that, because we've got the theft of the Moonraker space shuttle, haven't we? First of all, so you've got the space shuttle that's on the back of whatever's transporting it, and then two people get out of some hidden compartment
with their leather jackets, we should say.
Yeah, and I was like, what the hell's going on here?
I thought the security was especially lax on that really important space shuttle they were transporting by the RAF, which interestingly, the RAF plane had her cupboards labelled trash, which vexed me somewhat because I'm pretty sure the RAF would not have cupboard, the metal sort of lockers that store all the airplane food called trash. I'm pretty sure that was an American plane, not a British plane.
Yeah, exactly, because we'd have called it rubbish or some such. So they nick the space shuttle and completely blow the RAF plane out of the sky, and then this is where Bond is called back from his mission, and I think he's in Thailand, and this is where
shagging his way into trouble again. Another lady in bed with him with a gun under a pillow.
So if we're starting the shagometer for this episode, does that count as a shag? Because is he in bed with her?
Well, no. I think he intimated that the other fella, the pilot who turned around with a gun to, he said I think it was something like, "Oh, we're a bit premature, aren't we? Can we just it was hinting that nothing had actually happened yet."
Okay.
I don't think that was shag number one.
Yeah. So the Tailoring Talk / Play Pause Turn VAR basically says no shag. Moving on. So Bond's on a plane on his way back to England, and then gets into a fight with the people on the plane, and then ends up basically getting shoved out of the plane without a parachute. So he has to go after the other bad guy to get his parachute. There was a very famous scene in Arnold Schwarzenegger's Eraser, not such a famous movie, I just realized, but it's famous to me because I've seen it so many times, where Arnie has to do the same thing, right? But where the hell did Jaws come from? Did anyone notice Jaws on the actual plane before these two jumped out?
Yes, briefly. When he jumps out with the other guy, there's a third person at the door, and it is Jaws.
And it is Jaws. Okay, right.
But he must have been in the loo, and he must have come out the loo, and which confuses me a bit because he was quite, Bond was quite intimate at that point.
Even Jaws needs to have a poo, though, Alex.
But this must have been a pretty long poo, really. Poo? I mean, it must have been in there.
From Jaws, I bet it was, to be fair.
I mean, that plane was doomed anyway. Can you imagine Jaws going and blocking up that loo? If I take Emily to the toilet, it's just a little, you just need a little bag, right?
People below, do you? Blimey.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly. But, Jaws going to the loo is like taking a bloody Doberman to the loo. You need a black bag to clean that up. Jeez. So I've got dogs. So yeah, when you start talking about bum rubbish, then I start, equating it to dogs. Anyway, sorry, where were we? So opening sets. So it was brilliant. And obviously you could see that the stuntmen weren't Roger Moore and weren't Richard Kiel and weren't the other. I mean, it was so obvious. And you could see the zips on the back of their suit jackets where they'd been altered to put a parachute underneath.
Yeah.
And I know it's but you see, it's ironic because we're going to talk later on about the cable car sequence, right? So you understand the need for safety, but they're so inconsistent, the Bond filmmakers, because there was no safety going on the cable car sequence. As I say, we'll talk about that in a bit. So Bond gets the bit better of villain number one, but then Jaws drops out of the plane and drops in for a bite, and ends up coming the wrong end of trying to get hold of a parachute or whatever, and then he goes flying into a circus that's going on. So I think the thing for us is that for Carolina and I is that we're watching this opening sequence and it was very thrilling, and then all of a sudden it just turns into pantomime when Jaws sort of plummets head first into this circus, brings the whole thing down, and it kind of set the tone for Jaws in the rest of the film, I think, which it was a little bit of a shame.
The segue, the very, very, I thought the very clever, arty segue of him falling into the trampoliner's net, and that then becomes the first graphic for the nudie lady dancing in a silhouette opening sequence. And I thought that was I just thought that was quite a clever little sort of artistic segue from the actual scene to, to the usual opening sequence.
Yeah, but it was still very, rah, 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 with his
the fact it was really
silhouette
obvious
spinning
model
around
as well. All the cars shook and the ground shook when he hit the bottom of the. I love the miniatures in this film. They were so endearing and charming, all of them.
There was a lot of miniature work in this film. But that neatly did lead us into the title sequence. You're absolutely right, John. And then we get Shirley Bassey back for a third time. And John's already screwing his face up. I admit it's not a bad song, but when it comes on my 007 playlist, it is one that I just skip almost straight away. I probably let her get halfway through the first verse, and then I hit the forward button. Alex, how do you feel about Moonraker, the theme song?
It's fine, but it's not great. I think there's a lot better songs. I think that's the problem when you have such a powerful history of songs. Then I think it's just this one was a bit meh.
Kind of carried on the sort of I don't know how you describe the music for the Roger Moore era Bond films up until you get to A View to a Kill, which is brilliant, by the way. Richard Gore will be listening to this and he'll be breaking his radio or whatever it is. Do people listen to podcasts on the radio? You can't, can you? Why did I just say that? On his wireless.
Using a Robert streamer or something like that.
Oh, okay, fair enough. He won't be. But yeah, he'll be breaking his iPhone or whatever, listening to me, except because he thinks Duran is one of the worst Bond songs ever, which I totally disagree with. I think it's brilliant. But the Bond songs for Moore prior to that were very, don't know, but I don't want to say weak, but they had a certain style that was kind of in keeping with Roger Moore's Bond, right? Do you know what I'm trying to? You know what I'm trying to say?
Tiny wah-wah guitars and kind of sort of a big band feel to them and kind of
ballady.
Yeah, a bit like the riff that Robbie Williams used for one of his songs. The sort of the chords, the string chords from some of the
Bond wasn't that from You Only Live Twice?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Millennium.
That's
yeah,
it.
But
that's the one.
It's kind of orchestral, slightly 70s guitar twang kind of riff, really.
So anyway, didn't blow us away. The one thing that I did think about through the title sequence is there's a lot of nipple in there, aren't there? If you're a small kid, no wonder I don't remember the title sequence. My mum probably always fast forwarded that bit. Yeah, because I can't look at naked women. There's a lot of naked women stuff going on. I said to Carolina, I said, why did I always have naked, totally naked women in the title sequences? And she's like, because it's just sexism, isn't it?
It's broccoli. It's the broccoli thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you look at sorry, Carol.
No, you go, carry on.
Well, if you look at one of the sequences in the film, which we'll talk about later on, where Bond enters this massive lair and there are just basically beautiful women all around him, I can just imagine that being Albert Broccoli walking into one of his one of his big palaces in Las Vegas, and having all his sort of female flunkies surrounding him. It was very much a lot of kind of wishful film part, I imagine.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. I'm just wondering, what were these films rated when they came out? Were they rated 15 or 18? 15 maybe back then?
I don't know if they had those ratings at the time. I mean, this film, I'm just trying to look it up. I can't see.
Look up, maybe look up Moonraker VHS cover, and it would have UK. That's the Google search I'm doing right now.
I'm looking at it now. Oh, I can't.
PG.
A certificate.
It's a pretty cool poster, I have to say, the Moonraker poster. But I can't see. I think if we had the time to do this and look it up, but it's pretty cool.
Certificate A, wherever that is. But I've got some here that are PG.
PG.
Yeah, it was an A, which was for
Adult?
anyone, I think.
Advisory.
No, I think advisory was what it was. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Which is basically the American version of PG. Yeah, it's PG in the UK. but that might be a retrospective because they sometimes release certificate films, don't they?
Well, that was its original, so they kind
was.
of I'm just having a look on IMDb, and
Yeah.
the thing is, it's always been PG, but the original was basically, it says United Kingdom A.
Yeah. We meet well, obviously he has his mission briefing with M and Q and everyone. Bernard Lee's looking a lot older, isn't he? I don't know how many more he did after this one, but I know he was obviously getting on, and he wasn't well either, as we
He had
kind
the
of
old
went into the
drinker's nose, wasn't he? Bit of diphtheria there. Sorry, dipsomania, not diphtheria. Drinker's nose. You could see from his nose he obviously liked the odd tipple and was getting on a bit.
Yeah, very
Bless
sad. But Bond
Yeah.
gets a gadget, the first of many gadgets in this film, actually. So I'm not gonna do my usual to Alex and put him on the spot, because I don't think that would be fair, because there's just too. I
There's
lost
quite
count.
a lot. I mean, there are quite a lot, but what's funny is I mean, they are all used, because there's so much that he gets out of using the gadgets this time. So there's nothing throwaway.
We've got to that stage now
where
when the gadgets are shown, it's pretty much foreshadowing a sequence in the film.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Well,
and otherwise, why would you have them?
There are a few. Well, the thing is, we'll come on to it, because there's basically a gadget off that we need to talk about later on. But
one brilliant gadget.
But yeah, we'll talk about that. But yeah, most of the ones that he's given, he uses, so that's quite straightforward.
I think you almost get the feeling that he didn't get so when you think of later films like GoldenEye being probably the best example, where he's given a range of gadgets in GoldenEye. The Omega watch with the laser, the pen with the clicky top, the BMW Z3.
Yeah, the BMW. Yeah.
Yeah, the BMW Z3.
He could remote control his beamer in the garage with his phone.
Well, that was in Tomorrow Never Dies.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which all that happened in Brent Cross car park, just literally a couple minutes away from me, by the way.
Awesome.
I used to drive my little Ford Fiesta 1.4 Gear X around it with that soundtrack on. And much to the security guards' amusement. So what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so he gets one gadget, but you almost feel like in this film they kind of didn't maybe know exactly where the script was going as they were shooting, and so the gadgets that then pop up later, it's like when they get stuck in the exhaust vent before the space shuttle incinerates them, and it's like, oh my god, because I was like, how the hell are they going to get out of this? Because I'm thinking he's only got that wrist gadget, the wrist darts. And then obviously he gets his watch out and he's got a handy little bit of C4 and a detonator thing on it.
Which he's so it's very calmly, very slowly just put together, as if he's like sewing up a stitch his jacket. And you think probably Holly was going, come on, pants.
Yeah, but she wasn't, though, because again, okay, we're just going to jump backwards and forwards, which is fine. But at the end, when they have to go after those nerve gas canisters in space and shoot them, and they're skipping across the Earth's atmosphere, and the plane's like literally going to pull apart or whatever, and it's getting really, really hot. But he's just raising an eyebrow and he's just calmly, I need
training.
The thingy's jammed, get the joystick out, Spectrum ZX joystick or whatever it is, and calmly do it that way, do it manually. Why didn't you do it manually in the first place? You probably would have had more chance of sorting it out. But neither of them are panicking or shitting bricks or anything. So they're very, very calm all the way through. And speaking of calm, we then meet Hugo. Is it Hugo Drax? Hugo Drax. I want to say Hugo Drax. I haven't looked at his name.
Well, you mean we go to his big sort of complex where he's transported his own French chateau across to the middle of the American countryside. But I just want to go back a bit very briefly, Bobby, because his first suit I thought was really nice. Which was a sort of a nice double-breasted thing with a waistcoat. But what I noticed most of all, which is a really nice touch, and it's a sign of a true gentleman, was his two buttons. The bottom one was undone.
Yes, as it should be.
And it should be. And I just think that little sort of attention to detail was that the studio, or was that more that did that? I wonder. That's what I found.
Well,
really
no,
interesting.
it's just general etiquette, John.
Yeah.
So not more, not studio. It's just what you should do. It's a law of nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously. And then we met the slutty chopper pilot, who was literally hanging
Oh
out
my
of her.
God. Yeah.
So we mustn't forget that. And again, I have to say, and I know the Bond franchise has not got a great history with women and how they treat women. This was a film with a lot of very, very beautiful women in this time around.
Mm-hmm.
And she was an interesting character, but I also knew straight away, because I had no memory of her in this sequence of the film at all. I knew straight away when she helped Bond later on that she was up, chopper pilot was up for the chop, basically. But let's go to Drax, as you were saying, in his French chateau.
Yeah, totally. Well, there were, before we even got to Drax, I mean, there was Slutty Chopper Pilot, and then there were two more women, and then there were more women.
Sexy fitness ladies outside of the rover.
There was just women popping out everywhere. So it's great. Apparently, astronaut training school. Like, if that's how you train to be an astronaut, to go up into space by doing Jane Fonda fitness videos.
Well, they were the master race, weren't they? So they're already pretty quite fit, I imagine. But
yeah, not that fit.
There was
anyway.
a fair bit of oiling, I imagine.
Yeah,
a bit of greasing up.
But it's like Drax, right? He's really cool. He's got his manservant next to him as well, who incidentally was the Taekwondo instructor of one of the producers or someone on the crew. So they basically just sort of used him. So he wasn't an actor.
He reminded me instantly as he walked in of, I just thought Drax was going to say, Keto! Oh, Keto! And go full Inspector Clouseau on him and have a fight in the chateau, but that didn't happen. So
is it, have you seen Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon in The Trip?
Yeah.
When they're doing their sort of impressions of Roger Moore and then they do the villain and it, come, Mr. Bond. Are they is it Drax that they're doing for that? Because he says, come now, Mr. Bond. I was really disappointed that Roger Moore didn't raise an eyebrow and say it's a little bit early for that.
Well, I mean, we've missed the big elephant in the room here straight away with Dr. Goodhead. I mean, is this the first film of? I mean, have we had Pussy Galore yet? We have, haven't we?
Yeah, we had Pussy Galore.
Yeah, we have.
I mean, so it's not the first naughty name they've chosen for an actress, and we know we've got Christmas coming on later, haven't we? Christmas comes but once a year. But I just thought that there were very, very few quips from Bond about her name. I thought he missed so many opportunities there.
By the way, I think the line is, "I've always wanted to spend turkey in Christmas."
Oh yeah, okay.
That the world is not enough is my Bond film, because all the SFX on that film were done on computer rigs that I designed, built. Yeah,
right.
We'll get to that eventually. And it's the first and only ever Bond film I saw with my dad in the cinema. Yeah, he gave away a massive spoiler alert when Goldie turns up. Yeah, my dad just sort of went out loud. He was like, "Oh, he's the bad guy, isn't he?" It's like some groans around the cinema.
He's like Homer Simpson as they walk out of Star Wars, isn't he?
Yeah, basically, yeah, exactly. But Drax, look at the way that Drax is dressed. We're going to talk about the tailoring, because he's wearing the typical Bond Blofeld style, kind of
that they use in Austin Powers, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
It's a tunic.
You kind of like walk in and it's like, okay, so this is the evil guy. I mean, you just see someone dressed like that, they're evil. Okay.
He was very good at the piano, though. I think he was actually playing that piano when they.
Do you really? Do you think so?
I think he was, because I watched very carefully.
He was.
No, but I watched very carefully. I don't think in 1979 they had the technology to blend those hands, because it was a one. It was a one shot from his hands up to him. I was very impressed by that.
The audio didn't even match. That was the problem. So he could have been playing. He could have been playing, but I don't think he was playing the same thing, because it didn't match what he was playing.
He was miming something else, was he?
Yeah.
Well, Michael Lonsdale was a French actor, and they had to have a French actor, or they decided to have a French actor because it was a French-British co-production. And he was sometimes known as Michel Lonsdale, and we'd also have seen him in The Day of the Jackal, and he was also in The Name of the Rose and Remains of the Day. He obviously liked doing films that were of the.
He was in Ronin as well, wasn't he?
Was he in Ronin?
He was in Ronin, yeah.
Oh wow! Do you know I don't remember much about Ronin aside from that car chase?
Wasn't he the doctor that Ronin visits to remove the bullets?
Ah, okay.
French chateau. Well, not French, like a French sort of gentry's, like a farm, like what am I saying? A farmer's house. And he sits him down the chair and provides him with all the gear, like an old friend of his that used to fix up Ronin whenever he was injured after a particular difficult mission. I'm pretty sure that's who he was.
He had a very long career. He only left us 2 years ago, sadly, at the age of 89.
Jean-Pierre in that film.
Yeah.
Yep.
He did appear with another 007, Daniel Craig, in Munich.
Oh yeah.
Very, very good film. So yeah, I thought he was quite good in this. He was a good Bond villain. He was quite sinister, very smooth. I thought he did a really, really good job. Alex, what did you think of the villain in this one?
I think, he always seemed to be quite in control of the situation. Even when things were getting away from him, he seemed to be like, don't worry, I can do this. Don't worry, I can do this. Right until the end, he was pretty much still had quite a good screen presence. There were a few. I think it's really difficult not to nitpick, and I think if you nitpick, you'll sort of take some of the fun out of it. But I do think as a villain goes, he was pretty good. He wasn't the most compelling villain though. He didn't really have any much depth to him, but it was fine.
Looking back at this as a Bond film, he fits the classic villain mold completely.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So in sort of retrospect, he's a classic crowd pleaser of a villain. But at the time, perhaps that was different. Does that make sense?
I think it's funny because one of the things that I found interesting about his, so when you look at his plan to repopulate the Earth, and it gets progressively worse as he kind of explains it, and it's almost like we've kind of heard it in reverse. So by the time you get to the end, you're kind of going, oh, okay, that's pretty dark. Whereas at the start, you're just kind of going, oh yeah, well, I want to go up to space too, and that repopulating sounds quite nice. And it's almost like he missed a scene where he kind of should have spelt it all out, as we are all, we all need to be obliterated. Yeah, it felt like he missed that somewhere. There was plenty of him doing exposition, but it was weird because when you get to the space station and you see these like pods full of poison, all of a sudden I'm thinking, wow, this is really deep. Yeah, this is dark stuff. This is great. But for the first half of the film, you didn't really get any of that.
It was pretty dark when he sent the dogs on Serene, though, I thought.
Extremely, yeah. That was, do you know, that really
dark for this film.
There's the style of editing and the way that was shot reminded me of old classic, 70s horror films like The Omen and things like that. It had very much that sort of vibe to it. And probably the reason I don't remember that scene is because it was probably another one that my mum maybe fast forwarded for some reason. Maybe I was just playing with Lego or my Star Wars. I was probably playing with my Star Wars figures up until it got to the space bit. That's probably more like it. Yeah, exactly.
Do you think though, again, I think of strange things when I watch these films. Do you think that the only reason that they made those gas canisters out of Venetian glass is so they could use Venice as a location?
Possibly.
Yeah, I mean, it was very flimsy.
Yeah, it was very follow the trail of breadcrumbs so that we can get to another amazing location that Cubby had a great holiday in and decided we need to use this place.
That's so true.
Yeah. So
chateau, didn't he? We should go back to that chateau, shouldn't we, and pick up the thread because there's some cool stuff in this, Bobby.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, he gets his shag in, doesn't he, with helicopter pilot Corinne?
Yep, that's shag number
And
one.
and it's a fateful shag. She's not coming back from that one because she then, well, he tells her that he's after information again, as in every film before. I want information.
She turns
And
down quite quickly, doesn't she? Though I mean, there's no real kind of like convincing.
yeah,
Go and
well,
get her into bed, and then she
I
does
think
does the dirty.
because he does the creeping around. He sort of leaves her in bed, and then he goes to have a little nose around, and then she comes out, doesn't she? And she's resisting, but then he says, "Is there a safe?" And she gives it away by looking towards where the safe is. And obviously, once that happens, it's kind of like, okay, well, I've gone that far. I might as well just give him the rest now. So you could kind of understand it from that point of view. So yeah, so he gets what I don't even know what he got out of the safe. I just wasn't paying attention.
Well, it was some blueprints for the hexagonally cylindrical.
That's it. Yeah.
And the sphere thing that they throw out the spaceship at the end.
Yeah, that's it. Which is what leads him to Venice.
Yeah, but he opens some sort of Louis XIV clock. And the door opens. It was quite a cool scene because then he gets out his safe cracking cigarette case, which was one of the coolest gadgets in the film, I think.
Yeah,
with its sort of X-ray panel. I mean, absolutely no way that technology could exist in 1979. There were no flat screens that big. It was hilarious. It was meant to be like an X-ray device because he picks it up, doesn't he, and turns it towards her and says, "Oh, I see you got an underwire bra or something through a jumper." But did you spot the spy camera though? The small micro.
Yeah, with
camera?
the double O. Yeah, the lens was the middle O.
So cool.
You want one of those, don't you?
I want that so much.
I'm sure someone makes a replica.
Yeah,
you could probably get one somewhere on the internet, I'm sure, or get someone to 3D print one.
Keep talking.
Yeah. So he obviously goes on his way to. I thought it was another pretty cool bit when because they're doing the grouse shoot, aren't they? Yeah. And they've got. Well. Yeah, Drax basically has told his henchmen to ensure that some harm comes to Mr. Bond. And so Bond basically, goes to shoot. Well, we think he's shooting a grouse and he misses, but he doesn't miss. He actually gets the sniper in the tree that was planted there to take him out, which I thought was really cool because that, again, it's just that sort of side to Roger Moore's Bond, which is ruthless and cold. Exactly. Which I think is one of the things that he always did manage to play quite well.
They called it out though, didn't they? It was like, "Oh, you missed. Did I?"
Yeah. The guy crashes out of the tree, and then the poor Corinne meets her fate after Bond leaves because and it is quite violent fashion because Drax sets his dogs on him. I thought that was really cool. Those two dogs were so well trained because earlier in the mansion when Bond first meets him, he chucks two massive stakes at them. I get out the car. I haven't even opened the front door if I've got meat in the bag, and the dogs are literally tearing the door apart to get on the other side. So for those two to literally just sit there with two prime bits of meat in front of them and not go for them until the click of the fingers.
I jotted this down when I saw that because I think this is basically this is character development because it's basically showing. It's a display of utter authority over everything, isn't it? Like it shows how much of a control he has over the people in his life and the animals, that he can just literally make them wait. And it was interesting Bond watching him do that as well. But it's just utter control, isn't it, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of feel like this Bond, though, Roger Moore's Bond is a bit more observant than Connery's Bond was, because Connery's Bond was, whilst he was smart, he was a little bit more like a blunt instrument, whereas Roger Moore's Bond's kind of a little bit more sort of canny and suave and
he will always check all exits from a room, won't he, this current Bond? So
I feel like he'll be thorough enough. Yeah, I think so.
It was that. It was when he saw the glance across to the clock, and that gave away where the safe was. That's the sort of Bond he is. Whereas Connery wouldn't have noticed that. He'd have been too busy trying to slap some lady in the face, probably.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, so that they end up in Venice, and
I've been in that glass shop. I've been in that shop.
Really?
Yeah, I
Oh,
recognised it
wow.
straight away. When I went in there, though, it was ankle deep in water. It was because every so often the San Marco Square gets flooded, and they put planks out so you can walk across into shops. But the
Right.
shops themselves just have a little bit. They're used to it now. If you look at everything in the shop when you go back and watch it, there's nothing below a certain level in the shop, so nothing gets flooded.
Yeah.
But it was really cool to see it, and some of the squares they walk through as well. I mean, they were his route from the shop to that little back square and then to the lab. They were not in any way connected. They were all different locations because I recognised some of them as well. I had my honeymoon in Venice, you see, so
okay.
got a lot of photographs, and I remember.
I kind of recognise some of it from Casino Royale as well. So you know, all kind of, you know, the sort of fan in me wants to believe that Casino Royale they had little nods to Bonds of the past.
Yeah.
Because I could just see Vesper sort of walking, you know, sort of through that square to get to the bank, and Bond following her and so on. Anyway, sorry, I'm way ahead of time there because we'll get to that film in about 5 years.
Pretty sure that the girl in the shop her voice was dubbed as well.
Yeah, probably. She's the girl that we see later on in the sort of Aztec set, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here is where he discovers the lab where they're making that sort of nerve gas thing that's going to kill billions of people.
But no animals.
No animals, exactly, because the rats are fine. But in that lab, I felt really sorry for those two scientists or whatever. Oh, no, before that, though, to get into the secret lab, the key code thing was from Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Well, you've missed something out, Bobby.
What?
Well, the blinking gondola hovercraft chase thing.
Oh God!
This is why I don't like doing the film like sort of in order, because I always forget stuff.
Because I jot down the things that amaze me, and I have it highlighted in extra bright yellow. Because
I thought I was going to come on to the gondola though, because I thought the gondola was after.
No.
But that's the other thing about this Moore. He loves a bloody boat chase, doesn't he? Loves a good old boat chase. This Roger Moore.
I finished my Live and Let Die Diaries book, and a lot of the first half of that book was all the boat chases in Florida, and he wasn't a massive fan because at one point he broke his kneecap and broke a couple of teeth when the boat stopped him very quickly. So I think he'd probably think more like he was thinking, "Oh my God, another boat chase." It's probably what Moore was thinking, actually.
Yeah. When that gondola, they rigged a 120 horsepower engine to it, and then they couldn't control it. It just kept crashing everywhere. So there was a lot that went wrong. And then when they turned it,
5 silk suits, didn't he, in that scene? It kept tipping him out into the water.
Yeah, that's right. And then the very final time, he had one suit left. And yeah, silk and water basically are not good bedfellows. So yeah, and then when it turned into a hovercraft, I mean, by this time I was just laughing hysterically. I just found it so funny.
But they also had the man looking at the wine as the gondola went past. The same man who looked at the wine on the beach. I'm not sure it was the same actor, but that sort of running theme of I've drunk too much. I was looking at his wine.
Yeah.
Did you see that, Alex?
Yeah, I saw that.
And
then there was another afterwards. Someone was pouring wine.
Yes,
as well. That was another one.
But to get that gondola to go across San Marco Square with all those crowds of people through them, I'm pretty sure they couldn't all been extras, or maybe they were.
No, so they first of all, sorry, I just put myself on mute to go and tell my dog to shut up. And funny enough, she started when we were talking about those bloody dogs. So the drunk guy was the same drunk guy from The Man with the Golden Gun. So they basically continue the same guy. It's the same assistant director,
actor.
same location. He's not an actor. He was like a location director or whatever. So same guy. So they're going to continue that gag. So look out for him in subsequent Moore films. Yeah. And as in Roger Moore, not Croydon Moore films. That wasn't bad English. M-O-O-R-E. The crowds in Venice were tourists. They just couldn't clear Venice of them. They were just there. And when they were pulling the hovercraft along with Moore on it, obviously what the tourists going to do, they're just going to stand there gagging at, you know, this weird thing. Not all of them knew necessarily that it was James Bond.
That would be the reaction if that scene was real, wouldn't it? Anyway, so you're going to get a genuine reaction out of the people, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they just kind of continued, you know, just decided to just keep it going and just roll with it, which, you know, and I think for those sorts of things, the film is all the better for it. Because like when they have him arriving in Venice, he arrives on Concorde, and what happened there was that he actually was ill. He had a stone lodged between his kidney and his gallbladder or something.
Oh, so gallbladder stone
or whatever. So he basically couldn't get to set with everybody else. So filming was delayed. But he said, I'll be able to have the procedure and then I'll get over as quick as I can. So they put him on a Concorde to get over there. And so Roger Moore says, I think in his diary, that he's on the plane lands, he can see from the plane that the film crew's there and they're actually rolling the cameras. So they filmed the Concorde. So that's why Bond arrives on Concorde. It's because Roger Moore came over on Concorde, basically. Because that was the fastest way in those days, obviously, to get him from A to B.
It's still the fastest way in these days if Concorde was flying, because nothing's beaten it.
Yeah. Well, let's segue here.
That's my one, real wish. I feel really sad that I never got to fly Concorde.
That was Concorde was only for like super duper rich people, right?
Yeah, because it was like, it was stupidly fast, and the fuel costs were astronomical. And there were lots of safety issues, which is probably the main reason why Concorde shut down, really. And I think because they priced themselves out of the business. But
yeah, the economics didn't work, did they?
Yeah, but amazing. Were they French designed Concordes? I think they were, weren't they?
I think
it was a partnership between Air France and British Airways.
Yeah, lovely things. My father got to fly one once. It took him like 3 hours to get to America. It was ridiculous.
My biggest memory of Concorde was a Kenny Everett sketch where he's playing the piano as Barry Manilow. He turns around and he's got a Concorde. Do you remember that? He's got a Concorde attached to his nose, and
bigger and bigger and bigger.
It gets bigger and bigger, and he's knocking everything over. I don't know how I remember that. It's just like really weird things that you hold on to from your childhood. Like two of the young ones basically in the shower and sort of crashing through the window when the lights get cut off or something. Neil and the other one. Anyway, I was never allowed to watch the young ones. So yeah, if I was watching it, it was in secret. So Venice, hey, beautiful place. Because I can't remember what happens after Venice.
So after Venice, they have the whole. He meets Holly's knee on the.
Oh yes, he does.
And they talk about pooling resources, and then he gets his shag number 2.
Yes,
and she does a quick exit with her bags, and he gets the minister in to show them where the lab is, and it's not there. And old Drax has been very clever at getting rid of the lab very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like wrapping up that scene fairly quickly in Venice to move on to Rio, isn't it? Is it Rio next? Yeah.
Yeah, well, also there's a big fight, isn't there? Because Chang is in Venice, and he attacks Bond. So there's that sort of sword fight and the other guy's got the kendo stick or whatever it is.
It's a saber.
Yeah.
Basically, they smash up millions of pounds worth of Burano glass, don't they? Basically.
Yeah, that's right. Because there's also that vase that's worth, in excess of $1 million American. So I was looking at it, and it's like Bond straightens it, and even I was like, "Oh, phew, thank God for that!" And then literally in the next second, the other guy just smashes it to smithereens. But it was just another. That was the one thing I thought about Roger Moore is his fights to date had been quite good, because he got involved with 70-80% of the actual stunt work involved in those fights, which always helps for an authenticity and so on. So yeah.
I mean, naturally Bond is a good swordsman. He would have had a classical schooling of sword fighting. Well, probably use the rapier fencing. Yeah. See Septem and all that.
Exactly.
I did a bit of fencing at school too, by the way, Bobby.
Yeah, well, we've got a treat fencing wise in the Bond series coming up
Yes,
at some
definitely with
point, haven't
Madonna.
they? With Madonna,
With
yeah,
Madonna.
and
Yeah.
Toby, what's his face?
I took up fencing at school because a pretty girl did fencing and I wanted to be near her. And she ended up going on a blind date, in fact, with Cilla Black. Not with
Oh
me, though.
wow,
Oh,
That's a
oh,
different story. But Lucy,
there you
name
go.
is.
oh. Yeah, we didn't have fencing at our school because we were one of the worst state schools in the country. The closest we had to fencing was people carrying knives
Well,
and
you were
guns.
fencing cigarettes, weren't you, around the back of the sheds? Fencing
No, I
products.
wasn't one of
So,
them. So what I used to do is I used to get a kid to nick stuff from Tesco's, and then I would sell it and undercut the top shop. I got into so much trouble for that when I got found out because I didn't realize why their takings were so low, and it's because basically I was supplying everybody with their stuff.
the early entrepreneur Bobby coming out there, you see.
Yeah,
Early
totally.
Okay.
I used to cut like my gym bags. I used to cut the lining so that I could hide all my little. You remember those money bags when we were kids that you take to the bank with your silvers in one and your bronzes in it? Yeah, so I used to just cut the lining of my gym bags to hide all those little money bags and then sort of sew them back up together again.
Don't listen to this, kids. This is bad.
Wow. This is a
Yeah.
dark side of you, Bobby.
If you're,
I didn't know you had it.
It's like Bill Nye in Love Actually, isn't it?
Exactly.
Be like
Oh,
me,
yeah.
and become a pop star, and they give you drugs for free. Anyway, sorry. Yes, children, don't listen to what I just said. And anyway, yeah, it's a lot of hassle slicing open your gym bag to put money bags in there and hide them from your parents. Just take contactless payments. I'll put a link in the show notes to a website where you can get a contactless card reader and set up an account that your parents won't be able to find out about. And you can always give Uncle Bobby an email at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com for any other advice you want on starting your entrepreneurial journey.
Nice.
So Bond gets out of Venice. He's got a vial of the gas that he gives to M for analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And M obviously has to sanction a unauthorized mission, sort of tell Bond that he's better take 2 weeks paid leave because Drax is obviously mates with someone in the government and it's causing an international kerfuffle. Yes, exactly. And so he goes on holiday to Rio de Janeiro. And this is where we get
white linen salmon shirt. Oh, that's a good suit. That.
Are we back to clothes again?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, but his linen suit and salmon shirt style I like. I really want to get a linen suit for summer, Bobby.
Okay, I'll sort it.
Quote me a price, please. I'm putting some money aside.
No problem. Yeah, it's really cool actually. Do you know what? Because I've got a suit kind of similar to that, and when I wore it last summer with a pink shirt, oh man, just walking down the street in Putney,
heads were turning.
Oh god, yeah, they were totally.
All I had blue deers having their teas at those tea shops, seeing him walk past.
No, they were younger than Blue Rinse Brigade. I had some bloke shouting, "Oh, it's the man from Del Monte," and I was,
"Oh, for goodness' sake! You didn't have the hat, did you?"
I didn't. Exactly.
And you didn't say yes.
I did not say yes. I said off. So anyway, so we're in Rio, and this is where we get the cable car sequence. Why they're taking the cable car, I have no idea, but the cable car gets stopped by Jaws, and then Jaws basically sort of heads on down to meet them on their cable car. And this is where we get one of probably the most dangerous stunts in Bond film history to date, because there was a lot of moving around on top of that cable car. They couldn't practically be harnessed up because the wires would keep getting caught everywhere. So the stuntman, had his name and I've lost it, but he basically said that he thought he could do it untethered. And that bit where he's hanging...
Where he's hanging off?
Yeah.
Like he was falling down
he
the
hasn't
side.
got a wire. That's him hanging off.
Because it's obvious that Moore is in some studio with a very, very, very plasticky, flexible cable car beneath him because he keeps bending the windows. But the dude down by the Mount of Christ Redeemer, he was not. That was not good for him.
It was Dickie Graydon, and that bit where he's hanging over the edge. The director Lewis Gilbert was at the bottom of the slope, obviously, and they're filming this thing. And then suddenly he just freezes because the guy's hanging off the edge of the thing for dear life. And the stuntman's hanging on, the whole crew's hanging on because the director hasn't yelled cut yet. So someone had to nudge Lewis Gilbert and say, cut. And then he came to and he's yelled cut. And then they were able to grab Dickie up and, stop him from falling 1,000 feet to his death. Bloody hell.
Wow.
That's what I found amusing, that they went to so much prep for the parachute sequence, and then for this, it's it swings and roundabouts really. It's like that guy that set fire in an earlier Sean Connery film.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Can we talk about Jaws's jump from one to the other, please?
He flew, didn't he?
It was hilarious.
It was hilarious.
He levitated.
It was so funny. It was like I'm just going to jump over, and then he just hopped, and then you just saw the picture of him like arriving at the other one, and you were like, no, he didn't.
You almost half expected one of those car wrecker magnets to be hanging off the other side that was pulling his teeth up.
Yeah. But that's what we as children. That's what we loved about Jaws, right? Because he was kind of scary but cuddly at the same time. Yeah. But this sort of dumbing down of Jaws from being this sort of terrifying thing to what he became in this movie was partly inspired by the director's grandson, because Lewis Gilbert's grandson, who was on set one day, basically tugged at his grandfather's sleeve and said, "Why does Jaws have to be a bad person?" And that's where the inspiration for Jaws's story arc comes in
love.
Yeah, well, it's not even so much the Jaws in love bit, because I guess a villain can fall in love, but we'll talk about it when we get there. But this is where the cable car does end up. Sorry, come.
We haven't mentioned Bond Shag number 3 yet, though, have we? Which happened before all this.
Oh, with the Rio de Janeiro girl,
Manuela,
the very pretty one. Yeah.
Oh,
well, that's where we see Jaws first, isn't it? Because there's the carnival,
he's the clown.
Mardi Gras.
He's the clown. Dude.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Those were
again. That's quite scary. I thought
that was quite scary. That was quite scary. It's creepy. The way that was filmed, it was like those horror movies where there's that character in the distance, and then it gets closer and so on. Yeah. It follows. Yeah. Oh my god, that film was so creepy. So we should do a horror movie episode on Play Pause Turn.
Excellent.
Really?
Yeah, I saw Smile. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, okay. I'll rent that and we'll watch that then. So yeah, really let's do a horror movie episode of Play Pause Turn. Yeah, cool. I'm sorry, listeners, but Alex, John, and I, we're all very, very busy. So, if we have to organise our other podcast on this one, just deal with it or press that skip forward 15 seconds button. So
they're doing that already.
Or they switched off.
We didn't mention the assassin in the gondola as well.
Who?
The one in the coffin.
The guy in the coffin.
Yeah.
We just
there was with the knives.
There were so many.
There's so many people popping up, and there's so many gadgets because even that was a gadget, like his thing with the coffin. Yeah.
Oh my god. Anyway. What did we get up to?
Anyway.
So we were in Rio, and we need to talk about the whole sliding down.
I mean, because at the beginning of that sequence, I thought, they're not going to slide down that because that's just instant death. But they do.
But where I reckon they got that from? Star Wars.
Romancing the Stone. Oh, yeah, Star Wars.
No, Star Wars. Because I think Romancing the Stone was after.
It was.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it was 81.
There's quite a lot they piled into that. But the other part was, I was thinking to myself, apart from the fact that would be death. But the other thing is just like, you can't follow it down quicker than the actual cable. It doesn't work that way. It's attached. It didn't. Oh, anyway, it's just so annoying.
Yeah, the scene implies that the cable car is traveling along the cable, not
That's
fixed in
right.
cables
Instead of
rotating.
that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's like
you know what
going
else?
the wrong way on an escalator, isn't it? Really?
You know what else we missed, right? So this goes to show just how much there is in this film, right?
It's packed.
We missed the bloody thing that spins around really, really bloody fast in the centrifuge thing. We completely missed that.
Yeah. This is it. So that was we did mention it. We did say try and get make sure it comes to some harm, and then.
Do you think though? Do you think that they spun him around for real, or did they just blow in the face with a hairdryer?
No, they blew him in the face with a hairdryer. Not a hairdryer. Right. It was very powerful vacuum thing.
Yeah.
And Roger Moore said that he was surprised that he had any hair left after that. It was so powerful. You could see his face though on the video.
He was quite dishevelled, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Didn't need any help. A Roger Moore sex face at one point, didn't it?
Yeah.
But,
oh, bless him. How old is he when he makes this? Is he 50? Yeah, when he does this one. That's a good point, right?
Be.
I was going to look that up. So the other bit. So let's talk about Jaws. Let's go back to Jaws because after Bond and Holly,
Goodhead, Holly Goodhead,
escape. Obviously, Jaws has still got something to deal with because the car thing that he's on then crashes into the terminal. But he survives again because you can't kill Jaws. And that's where he meets.
He's just got one of the motors around his neck.
That's it.
Like cable wheels. He goes, oh wow, and he pulls it off his neck and brushes off the dust again.
And then he sees Dolly with possibly the lowest cleavage in Bond history. Or what do you call this bit?
Wench.
It was yeah. I mean, it was literally even Carolina commented, and she was like, how low could that thing get before you could see her nips? But anyway, there we go. She was actually prettier than I remembered her from when I was a kid, because for some reason I thought she was spotty or whatever, but she actually wasn't unattractive.
Age update, Bond age update. So in the novel, Ian Fleming said that when Bond reached the age of 45, he should basically retire, come off the 00 list, and be given a desk job.
Right.
So Roger Moore was 45 in Live and Let Die. That was 73. So he would have been 51 in this film.
Okay, yeah, I thought he was 50-ish.
Possibly his birthday was in the same year, but after the filming, so he was still 50. If that makes sense.
Yeah, because I know his last one, View to a Kill, he was like 57. So yeah, so it from here it starts to get steadily creepier, especially when he's with younger Bond girls as well. But anyway, he's still entertaining. So Jules just basically gets his wagon wheel off his neck. Looks at Dolly, big smile. She smiles at him, and then they hold hands and just walk off. And that's that. I
drew love hearts in my notes at this scene.
Yeah. But then there's another speedboat sequence, isn't there?
Well, there's the ambulance sequence before then, isn't there?
Yeah, well, there's the ambulance sequence, but then there's another speedboat sequence because there's the second largest falls in the world there in Rio, and they basically decided to launch a boat off the end of it. But I don't know if that was in this bit. I can't remember exactly when that was.
But it was after Bond. So Bond and Holly get kidnapped and put into an ambulance, and she uses her sexy wiles to
That's it.
Distract the guy in the
my god, this was yeah. Sorry, can I just
there's a gag here, isn't there?
In this film, yeah, it's like a running gag. Like every time they're up against a bad person, it's like Roger Moore gives a little sort of wink and a nod and a smile, a cheeky little and then Holly does the same thing, and then they end up disarming them. But the thing I absolutely loved though was the chemistry between Richard Kiel and Roger Moore.
Yeah,
because every single time, like when he first sees him, like even when he's Yeah, the way that Roger Moore smiles at him as well, like he's imitating his teeth.
Again.
But that was so funny. But I loved it. It was so charming, really. But you almost kind of. But it almost didn't even look put on. It just sort of looked like how Roger Moore would have taken the mick out of Richard Kiel having to wear those stupid things in his mouth, right? It was just that was brilliant, honestly. Do you know my ranking of this film is climbing the more and more we talk about it. It was so much fun. So anyway, Bond ends up in the Aztec place, doesn't he?
Well,
because Holly
he meets up with MI6, doesn't he? First with the Kung Fu monks.
But that's when he starts being Clint Eastwood, isn't it?
Yeah, he wears that.
Oh
yeah, that's right. This was really random because it was like
it was.
Yeah, and they had the music from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly or something.
Wild West Bond.
Yeah,
it was weird.
I mean, I thought I was trying to sound clever with Carolina because she was like, the continuity is not very good in this film, and I was like, well, maybe they decided to do a little nod to Rawhide because he was in that series before he became Bond. But obviously that wasn't the music from Rawhide. It was, I know. It was not really. It was plausible. It was plausible.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, Carolina would have fallen for it, definitely.
Yeah, totally. When she listens to this she's about halfway through these podcasts now, so she's catching up. If God. You can't see my bruises because I'm brown, that's why she married me. Yeah, like the beatings don't show, but I have been getting beatings after like episode 30, 31, I think it was, where I said something about her height. I got beaten up.
Yeah, quite right.
What did you think of the explosive bowlers?
Oh, there were a lot of gadgets. So this was the trend now of having Q branch and MI6 or MI5 or whatever they are abroad in different locations.
Let's just up and go. Come on, Moneypenny. Let's go to Rio. Come on, Moneypenny. Let's go to.
And then they set up operations there. But yeah, so what did we have here? So we had the exploding bolos.
There's the dude, the old Mexican dude sleeping under his hat that split open and became a rocket launcher.
That's right. Yeah.
There was the laser gun, which was foreshadowing the sequence at the end of the film.
Yes,
with the face
melting the face. Yeah.
Which seems strangely kind of slow and weird when you get hit by a laser. You'd think it'd explode, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Really? You had the balls, the nerve gas balls.
Bowlers, bowlers, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
And then we had Q's sort of toxic liquid orchid explainer sequence.
Yeah. And then
Bond
finally
lots about as well.
And then finally we get the big off-camera gadget where Q says, I've got something else for you, but you better look after it or whatever. And it's the boat. He doesn't at all. But then we've got more and more gadgets on this speedboat, right? Because there's a speedboat chase. And then what's he got on there? So he's got the mine launcher.
Yep. He's got like a mini torpedo.
Yeah, the heat-seeking one.
Changes direction. It goes.
Yeah. Because it's heat-seeking, John. It missed them the first time. Yeah. Sort of went past and was like, "Oh right, there you are. Sorry."
That's a really hilarious crash test dummy flipping people with explosions.
Yes,
they were really funny. What else? And then any other gadgets? You think any more gadgets?
No, I think that's it for the.
I think it's the final one with the hang glider.
Oh, hang glider. Yes, that's right. That's how he got out, wasn't it?
The water explosions were cool, though, weren't they?
They were really
good. Those death charges were great.
Really spent some money on that sequence.
Oh God, I'm yawning. Really good job. Sorry, it was an early start for me, so I've been up since 4:30. But really, really good job. And then obviously Paul Jaws gets launched over the side of a waterfall, and there's a dummy in that. That was hilarious. So this one, there's one of the greatest Bond stunts ever, never to be captured on camera, because what happened was they decide they're going to launch a speedboat off this thing because it's the second highest waterfall in the world. And so it's about 4 feet of water, but it's constantly rushing. So it's not exactly safe for a human to be standing in there. So anyway, they get the boat and they're holding it in there, holding, let it go. It gets stuck on a rock. So about 3 foot of the front of the boat is protruding over the top of the waterfall. The rest of it is just stuck on this rock. It's not going anywhere. one of the stuntmen basically says, if you get me up on a cable and a harness on a helicopter, drop me over the top, I think I might be able to dislodge it. So that's what they did. So he had several attempts, and there were a few times where he got dunked underwater, almost drowned. Eventually, he managed to get onto the boat. Then he tried to dislodge it. He couldn't dislodge it. I can't remember what happened in the end. I mean, obviously they managed to eventually make it work, but I mean, this guy almost died trying to make this damn stunt work. All for the love of movie making. And that's why I say it here, and I say it on Play Pause Turn as well. I don't like being too harsh on filmmakers, even when a film is not great, because of the sheer amount of work that goes in behind the scenes. And I think just for the effort alone, you have to appreciate what filmmakers and all the crew, people involved with producing these things to try and entertain us. And okay, it doesn't always work, but there's a lot that does go in behind these films. And that's why I don't like being too down on films that I don't like.
More in those days than now, and so, but in different ways, I think. I mean, there's more work done in a room with computers now. But I think trying to be a producer for a film and just the nightmare, the arrangements of all of the crews, the film crews, the stuntmen, where now you could do a lot of that in post-production, must have been just such a headache. And so many amazing things they've done that are literally just on the cutting floor. We lost the scene of Jaws staggering out of the tent in the opening sequence. That's lost. There's only like a few stills on the DVD extras that you can see of him wandering out, because you've got to have a picture of Jaws coming out somewhere, dusting himself off after nearly dying. But you're right, Bobby. I still, again, after reading the Live and Let Die diaries as well, I've got a lot of respect for these crews of the 70s and 80s that really, a lot of it was just spit and sawdust, wasn't it, really? And it came together and looked so amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of looking amazing, this film, it's aged really well, I thought. It looked, I mean, I saw it on iTunes because as you know, I bought all of them.
So I saw it too.
Yeah.
In 4K. You did see the 4K version?
In 4K, yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing.
It looked fantastic.
It's the best looking one I've watched so far.
Yeah.
And I then went back and watched the featurette, one of the extras, which shows the original footage in the original 4:3. And how they converted that to 4K must be machine learning. So it just looked so terrible in the original version, but the 4K, it was, and the color grading was really beautiful in this film.
Very.
How did you see it, Alex? Did you see it in 4K?
Yeah, off the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I couldn't fault it. That's the thing. Like, one of the weird things was that, yes, you could tell when there were like stunts on a green screen and the miniatures. But I wasn't thinking to myself like, this was really naff. I was just like, I was enjoying it. And I think that's the thing. There are a lot of more modern films that wouldn't have got away with that. I mean, yes, there were lots to pick holes on, and the whole doing it, the whole zero gravity stuff only partly worked. But the thing is, it didn't really matter, because it was just the scale that they did things was so good that it didn't matter. It was just so enjoyable.
Yeah,
you could watch it, and that's what tells you it's a good film. Like, is that these little things that we're chuckling at, we still love the film because of all these things, because it was still so enjoyable. So that's great.
I mean, let's talk about the space sequence now, because we're pretty much almost there anyway, because obviously the reason they're in Rio is because they learned that the toxin comes from that rare orchid. It's amazing how much Bond knows about all these rare flowers and things.
He's done his homework, Bobby. He's a professional.
Yeah. But it's like he asks the guy, he says, can you call up the DNA sequence or whatever it is for me? And then he looks at the DNA formula and he's like, oh, it's this plant, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh, yeah, very good, Mr. Very good, Bond. Well done. M's very proud of him at this point. Anyway, so talking about the space sequences, so obviously they go up to Drax's space station in Moonraker 6, and there's 6 Moonraker shuttles overall that are taking this master race, because that is Drax's plan is to
fascist
basically
regime plan, is it?
Yeah, is to kill all of human life on Earth, have his perfect humans procreate up on the space station, and then send their seed back down to the planet to repopulate the Earth in his image.
There's one fundamental problem with this Bobby, right? He's got all the lovely, beautiful people up in his spaceship, but who's going to fix the engines and who's going to do all the menial work if he kills them all? He hasn't worked this out. He still needs the working classes to fix all his machines and mow his chateau lawns and beat the grouse out of the grass and so on. And his Ponzi friends all snogging on the shuttles aren't going to do that for him, are they? Really?
This is the problem with megalomaniacs, John. Whether it's creating a master race and wiping out humanity and putting your own people on the Earth that can't do anything else, or whether it's leaving the EU, they just don't think forward, do they? So yeah, there we go. We don't get political on this show, but Brexit, what a load of tosh. But one of my favorite shots of the film was when we get the reveal of Drax's space station. The light just hits
Thunderbird
the
3,
top.
isn't it?
Or Thunderbird 3, yeah, exactly. The light just hits the top of that miniature, and then as it gradually reveals the whole thing, it was just absolutely stunning. And in 4K, again, like you guys said, you just couldn't fault it at all. It just looks seamless. They put so much work into all the miniature work was done on the 007 stage at Pinewood. All of it was done on the 007 stage. The space shuttles themselves, the biggest one was about 5 foot tall, but again, they were mostly miniatures.
They got lucky, didn't they, Bobby? Because the design of the space shuttle hadn't been fully released by then. NASA hadn't released this design. So
they spent a lot of time up at NASA because they really wanted to make it.
They haven't finalized it, had they?
No, I can't remember I can't remember exactly what happened, but he had a design for a space shuttle. Then they had obviously the unused shuttle at NASA, which they saw, and that became the inspiration for what we then finally see in the film. The funny thing, I mean, Ken Adams, again, I mean, he'd previously done such amazing work in the previous films, like The Spy Who Loved Me and the sets that he did in the later Connery ones and so on. But for this one, there's a quote from one of the production team. They say one of the most expensive things in filmmaking is Ken Adams with a sketchbook and a pencil.
Well, I mean the title sequence for this film cost more than Dr. No.
The whole of Dr. No.
Literally, the title sequence of the film cost more than the whole budget for Dr. No.
Flipping out.
So
that's crazy.
Someone somewhere is spending a lot of money.
I think Cubby had balls with this film because at the beginning, before they started shooting, they were like, "We need to tell United Artists what the budget is for this." And then, in the end, he just turned around and it was just like 20 million. And they were like, "Are you absolutely off your rocker? Like, we can't go to United Artists and tell them that we want to spend 20 million on this Bond film." And he just shrugged his shoulders and said, "It's going to be the biggest and the best one yet. They'll want more after this."
And it was.
Yeah, it totally was. So the space station stuff, we had all the zero gravity things, and they were all on harnesses for that. So Lois Charles is quoted as saying that she absolutely loved doing all of that work because it made her feel like she was sort of flying like a little bird. And I think again they did a really good job considering it was 1978, 79. All of that wire work going on, and you didn't see any of it. I thought they did a great job.
I did think making everything, like filming a lot of the sequences in slow motion and then making that feel like that's low gravity was a bit weird because you don't move slowly in low gravity, you just move differently. I thought that was quite hilarious. Like at one point, you could tell inside the shuttle they were acting out the slow motion as they're doing it. Like that. It was so I'm waving my hands around now.
And they're sort of running to the control sort of switches or whatever. And yeah. Exactly. Sorry, Alex.
No, it's fine. It was just Goodhead's hair was just gave all of it away.
Oh,
Because
I'm gonna
obviously
have
you
to
can't
watch
do
it again.
anything
Well,
with
yeah.
air.
Yeah,
But
and
it was,
with the shot when the space station exploded, all the particles just dropped downwards on set. That was
that's
quite funny
it.
too.
Yeah. Oh dear.
They won. Sorry, they got nominated for an Oscar for special effects for this. They lost to Alien.
I can see that.
But
I can see why they were nominated,
Yeah.
but I'm not surprised that Alien beat them.
Now,
But,
can I just ask? Did when they went to NASA to look at the design of the shuttle, did they also get advice on the design of the women's space outfits? They seemed quite impractical to me. I know that there's no gravity in space. You'd have to worry too much about things falling out, but they seemed quite impractical to me compared to the men's outfits. Was that because they were quite keen for the master race to propagate as soon as possible, do you think, Bobby?
I think they just needed the spacesuits to be easy to get in and out of. I mean, if they'd been the same sort of spacesuits that we get in For All Mankind, then it would have just taken ages, wouldn't it? Getting in there.
right.
So Holly and Bond basically infiltrate the space station, and then they gather with the rest of the crew as Drax gives his big speech about his nefarious plans to do what we've already revealed. But it's within that sequence that we get a brilliant little piece of acting from Richard Kiel, where he has this sudden realization, and then Roger Moore does another little brilliant bit of acting, and in the dialogue basically just pushes Jaws to where he needs to be. And it's when Drax is talking about his perfect human specimens, and then Jaws kind of looks up and is kind of like, huh? And then he kind of forgets it and looks at Dolly, and they're all very happy because they're kind of like, oh, we're going to be procreating as well. And then 007 basically just sort of nudges him and gets him to realize that, once Drax activates his plan, Jaws is not obviously the prettiest thing in there. He's not the definition, Drax's definition of the perfect human being, and that he'll probably be discarded. So then Jaws has to make a choice. I really, really like that. I like the way they did it. They didn't just turn him into a goodie. There was a reason for him. He had motivation to team up with Bond and help.
Was that the scene where Bond then notices the? I'm looking at my notes right now because I've written in my notes, "lol" to space break. Where he presses a button and everyone gets flung around.
That's it.
I have to say, from this scene onwards, I was crying with laughter all the way through. And there's one particular bit we're going to talk about later on that made me almost, I guffawed with laughter. We'll come to that in a second. But this was just brilliant. Space battle. It's brilliant. It's all brilliant. I loved it. It was really.
But it's even ridiculous. Again, Holly and 007 get to have their little sort of, when they have to stop the radar jamming thing.
Yeah,
and they go into that little control. Yeah, exactly. And then it's the communications array guys, and then Holly gives them a little smile, and then Roger Moore gives them a little smile, and then they start beating them up. I thought Lois Charles, Holly Goodhead, I thought she held her own really well here. Kind of showed that she was a sort of competent CIA agent and all the rest of it. But Drax gets his comeuppance pretty quickly actually in this, because 007 goes after him when the army turn up or whoever they are, and start. I mean, this whole sequence with the astronauts turning up, it was basically Thunderball in space, and none of it was realistic at all. I mean, for all the work that they did, doing their homework, trying to make it as close to science fact as possible, this whole thing was complete science fiction. You don't come out of a space shuttle untethered and just kind of float across, able to just go shooting at whoever.
I mean, it's also, you're shooting lasers near a hermetically sealed capsule that if you hit it, everybody inside is going to be ejected through the air and die.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? It's just like, first rule of space, right, is don't shoot guns inside a spaceship. That's the first rule of space.
Exactly, as
Space
we know,
is dangerous.
as we
Anyway.
know from the Jamestown incident, John.
Yes, exactly.
For those of you who have not seen For All Mankind, if you
Don't
haven't
spoil
got
it.
an Apple TV Plus subscription, get one, or nick one, or
Yeah,
do
it's
whatever you
amazing.
have to do. And if
Yeah,
you have
can
got
I
an
have a
Apple TV,
login, Bobby?
we will.
It's got one
we
hidden,
don't.
hidden in the slice sections of his kit
Yeah,
bag next to all the
that's
money.
it. We used to
Tailoring
get a free
Talk.
year, didn't you? You used to get a free year of Apple TV.
Yeah.
Don't anymore.
Well,
They
you know,
stopped doing
you
that now.
would if you were buy. Oh, actually, do you know what? The next time I buy a new thing, I'll give you my Apple TV
No,
Plus code.
it's tied. It's tied to your Apple
Oh, is it?
email address.
A
Well,
shame.
you can't-
Anyway,
can't
I'd
share
just
Oh,
like
that.
to remind listeners that Apple TV, Apple TV / Tailoring Talk. If Apple TV want to sponsor this podcast, bring it on. Tailoring Talk does not condone password sharing of your Netflix, Apple TV Plus, Disney Plus, etc. accounts. But if you're writing to the
Support
show,
creators, pay for stuff.
yeah, exactly. Support creators. Yeah. But I'll speak to you after, Alex.
yeah. I've got one
yeah.
other thing. While we're talking about this, I have a bit of trivia. Can you name another film in space that came out the same year?
Alien.
Well, yes, but that's not the one. That's
I
not the
won.
one I've got in mind. That's not the one.
1978.
No,
79.
1979.
79.
Well, apart from Star Wars.
The Black
Well,
Hole?
Star Wars was
77.
Disney's
the
The
Black
Black
Hole.
Hole.
The Black Hole.
Ah,
Bobby.
that's a Disney film, isn't it?
Disney's The Black Hole came out
Oh,
in
it's a
December
great
the
film,
same
that.
year. It's got a
Quite
lot
a
of
different.
different
mood.
vibes, but the
Yeah,
space
definitely.
station, I mean, and the Black Hole
Brilliant.
space station.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Yeah.
to say about those.
And by getting the answer to that question right, my contract with Play Pause Turn has been renewed for another 12 months.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll let
you.
you back in. Yeah, we'll let you back in.
Can I tell you about the funniest moment of the entire film for me?
Okay.
So there's a scene at one point, and I think it's just after we've had a lot of space battles and lasers and people being sort of knocked into the distance into stars and things. But there's a scene where one of the Drax's henchmen, who are still kind of on the spaceship, quite near like a metal scaffolding behind him, and I have to say I wet myself laughing. This massive hand then comes round and grabs the entire face in one hand of the henchman, and it's George's hand.
Yeah.
It was just I don't know why.
It was
funniest.
brilliant.
I absolutely laughed out loud. It was hilarious.
There was just
I might go back and watch that bit again at some point.
it was just one thing after another, wasn't it, in this whole thing as well? And then when
Yeah.
when Bond kills Drax, when he puts him in the airlock, you know, go take a step for mankind or whatever. It's the way he dispatched him as well was just brilliant. You know,
It was
very funny.
classic.
Again, you know, Carolina sort of butted in with the science fact bits, like, you know, when he gets blasted out the airlock into space, she's like, he wouldn't have had time to scream.
No,
He'd have just died.
his blood would have been boiling and his eyes would have exploded and all the rest.
Exactly. That's it. Which again we know from For All Mankind on Apple TV Plus. So yeah, there we go. So that was Moonraker.
Well, hold on.
Well, we've got the very final scene where
you've got to mention it. You've got to mention it.
Well, so Bond and Goodheads, basically the space station's blowing up. They managed to escape on Moonraker 5. They've got to go after the first 3 glass balls that have got the nerve toxin in to shoot those, but they can't disengage because the thing's
disengage.
Yeah, the thing is stuck. So, but they see Jaws and Dolly on the camera, and Bond basically asked for Jaws's help, and I thought that was really sweet. But also, I was so worried because I was like, "Oh my god, are they going to die?" Like Jaws is going to sacrifice himself to help Bond. So, and you know, Jaws bites through the thing or whatever it is he does, breaks it, and then they go off to go and shoot glass balls in space, and then Dolly and Dolly and Jaws crack open a bottle of Bollinger 69 that just happens to be in the wreckage. And then he speaks for the first time. Well, here's to us.
Oh,
and
so
that,
good.
I think, is a line that George Lazenby, it sounds like a George Lazenby line for some reason. I don't know. Possibly. Richard will probably write to me after this goes out and tell me exactly what it is. But yeah, was anyone else worried about Jaws at this stage? Because I couldn't remember whether he lived or died.
I think doesn't
he did live.
say that they'll be okay.
Yeah, so no, basically when they're waiting, they see so when we're waiting for Bond to come up on the screen, they say that they just picked up the two survivors in the ocean.
Because their pod, their module they're in breaks off, doesn't it, before it explodes?
That's right. And more 007 says to Holly, "Oh, they'll be all right. It's only 1,000 miles to Earth or something."
That's it.
At the US
so we
base,
kind of know sooner that
the commander is told that two survivors are picked up: a tall man and a small blonde woman, implying that Jaws and Dolly indeed survived. They're never seen again after this, but it's presumed the Jawses left their criminal pasts and lived a happy and contented life.
Jaws was meant to be in a third movie, but then they decided with For Your Eyes Only to go back to a more serious kind of film, pared down formula and so on. Probably the studio's telling them off for spending so much money on this one, but they made a lot of money, so it was all right.
He was in GoldenEye, the N64 game GoldenEye, where he is back working for Drax Corporation again in a bonus level in GoldenEye.
Yeah, that's right.
As far as it goes, really.
That game was so good. We've got to do a PPT episode just on GoldenEye or 007 games or something. Sorry, I digress. Other podcast
anyway,
planning.
Back to them being caught in flagrante delicto.
Yes, so they managed to save the day by shooting out the balls that are speeding to Earth with their deadly toxin in. They managed to shoot them. We talked about it earlier. And meantime, back on Earth, they're preparing a satellite link because they've got cameras in the shuttle, and it's going to go live. Government, MI5, Defense, Buckingham Palace. So Her Majesty is going to be able to greet and thank Bond for saving the Earth herself, and the cameras pop up on Bond and Holly in what term would you use, John? Something clever with
flagrante delicto in gravity-free flagrante delicto. There you go.
So apparently this was really difficult to film because they were suspended on wires for this, Lois and Roger. And he kept banging into. She said he kept banging into her because he couldn't control the wires properly. So she said it was actually really, really awkward to film. But then we get one of the most famous lines of the entire 007 series.
From Q.
So, what on earth are you doing? Attempting re-entry, sir.
No, it's from Q.
Oh, it's from Q. Oh no, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I think they're attempting re-entry.
The delivery is so good because he's so innocent when he says it. He's all about the rockets in space, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right. It's just brilliant. And then Roger Moore's sort of look to the camera, i.e. looking at us, not them. Yeah, exactly. And then turning it off. And then that's it. The film ends. We get the longest credit sequence of any Bond movie to date, because usually it's just a very short sequence, and then they do the James Bond will return in whatever the next movie is. But this one, they did a full credit sequence with the music and everything. So boring. And there's no variation of that Moonraker song that's exciting to me. And then at the end,
that should be good.
Yeah.
Get the Moonraker in their archives mix. Yeah, that'd be good.
And then at the end we get exactly the same James Bond will return as we got in the last film, For Your Eyes Only, which is the next one that we'll be talking about. So over to our ratings and overall review. Alex, how did this score for you?
I'm going to give this I'm going to give this a 9.5.
Whoa. That's really high.
It is really high, but the thing is, there's so much to talk about in this film, and there's so much that you're given. It is really hard to knock them down on things. And while a lot of things are cheesy and just ridiculous, it's so fun. It doesn't matter. And it's the one film in the sort of the Moore and Connery sort of generation that just is indelibly like in my head. I can't get away from it because of Jaws and because of all of the ridiculous things that happen to him. And it just, I think I'm going to give it 9.5, which is the highest yet.
Wow. So this today is your favorite Bond film?
Yeah, honestly, I think this is my favorite.
Brilliant. John?
It's funny because I always hear the grades from the other team members before I hear my own, and they always mirror my thoughts entirely. I am giving this a 10 out of 10. Now, it would have been a 9.5 for that stupid song. It would have been a 9.5 for the song, but attempting re-entry at the end makes up for that, for the bad song and the face slapping scene. So for me, this is a 10 out of 10 for exactly the same reasons. I didn't look at my watch at one point during the film. It's again another 2-hour film. The pacing was brilliant. There's no kind of, it was relentless, but in a good way. The locations were brilliant, gadgets were excellent, plenty of jokes, brilliant action scenes and fight scenes, gorgeous looking, beautiful women, classic Bond villain. It had everything. It's my favorite Bond film yet, definitely by far. And I'm wondering if anything else will beat that. I'm a bit concerned about choosing 10 out of 10, but I thought of this grade last night before our podcast. I thought, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I love it.
Wow.
It's my favorite Bond.
So that's amazing, guys. Really, that is really amazing. Phil, I should have mentioned this at the start of this episode, but Phil couldn't be with us. He and I concocted the idea of the Bondathon, and he's so sorry that he couldn't be here with Jon and Alex and I today. He's not very well, but don't worry, he's not going to die. It's just a cold. But he and I are going to record a bonus episode so that he gets a chance to review the film with me. So I'll try and keep it shorter than this one, but you'll hear Phil within the next couple of days of this going out. And Phil's not looking forward to it. Like he's like, this film's going to be a stinker. He only remembers very small bits of it from when he was younger. He's going by what he's heard about Moonraker, that it's much derided and so on. I was going into this thinking that I would put it above Diamonds and above On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which would really put it at around a 7.5. But I am going to have to do some jigging around because I've got From Russia with Love as my number one at the moment, a 9 out of 10. And second, You Only Live Twice with 8.5. I think I'm going to have to move From Russia with Love up to a 10 because for me it is the perfect Bond film. And I'm going to have to put this in at a 9 because I did enjoy it a little bit more than You Only Live... Sorry. You Only Live... No, I did enjoy it more than You Only Live Twice. Hang on. Where's The Spy Who Loved Me? Now I need to go back and see what I rated The Spy Who Loved Me. I rated that quite high, didn't I?
Yeah.
I must have done. I must have given that a 9.
Yeah,
so this is a... No, I'm going to give this a 9. And I'm going to move From Russia with Love. No, I'm going to give myself some headroom. I'm going to move From Russia with Love up to a 9.5.
All right.
So there we go. But I really loved it. I've been pleasantly surprised at how well this film has held up. The 4K transfer obviously has helped.
Yeah.
But you see, a 4K transfer is only as good as what's gone underneath it. And again, testament to the work and effort that went in by the cast and crew. So those shots of the space shuttle flying through space was all rotoscope. So what they did is they did the first take with the space shuttle flying across, then they wound the film back, and then they put the next element in. So maybe it's the Earth. and then they let it go. Then they wound it back, and then they put the next element in, which might be the sun. Then the next element was the space station, and so on. Now, you imagine when you get into the space battle, like how much of that backwards and forwards they had to do. Now, back in those days, you had to physically take the film out of the can, wind it back and put it back in. And that left you open to all sorts of problems. If it got exposed to light, you've lost your film, you've lost your footage. If it got scratched or damaged while you were transferring it in and out, then you've got big problems as well. So, you know, all in all, that film went in and out of the canister over 96 times. And for them to have done it so carefully, and it's then given in the future people doing these 4K high definition restorations the best opportunity to present this film in its best light. And this, I totally agree with John, it is the best looking Bond film to date. It looks amazing, and it is aged so well. You could argue that probably the worst special effects in this film were the lasers, because they do not look as good as the ones in Star Wars. But I'm not surprised. It got nominated for an Academy Award for Best Special Effects. It won 3 Saturn Awards, one for Best Science Fiction Film that year. And it thoroughly deserves them. It's a triumph. And also what it helped to do for the film industry, in that the 007 stage, which we talked about on the last episode, the 007 stage being used for that level of special effects showed the rest of the world that Great Britain was somewhere they could come to make films that required that level of expertise, technical expertise. So this film is important for so many reasons, and I cannot believe I'm actually saying that to you today, because I honestly thought I was going to be like, I haven't got much to say about this. It was crap, and it's marginally better than Diamonds Are Forever, because it's not very hard to do that. But for me to put it right the way up there as my second favorite Bond film to date of the 11 we've seen, wow, I've blown myself away. There you go.
There's some pretty scathing reviews of this film from a lot of critics, and I can understand them.
Have you got any to hand there?
In most fans' estimation, Moonraker is the worst of all the 007 movies. It's certainly an easy mark for that title. The film has one of the dumbest storylines of the entire series, and its mixture of the spy and science fiction genres is goofy at best. It also exemplifies all the worst traits of the Roger Moore years, namely an over-reliance on silly gadgets, bloated spectacle, and bad comic relief. One of the most effective elements of The Spy Who Loved Me, the hulking evil henchman named Jaws, makes a return appearance and is immediately turned into a cartoonish mockery of his formerly menacing self. Worse, he's even given a love interest, a mute, possibly retarded girl in blonde pigtails and glasses. The jokey meta-movie references that have plagued earlier Moore pictures are also back in the form of musical cues from both 2001 and Close Encounters. Plus, one costume straight out of a spaghetti western. Despite a nomination for the Best Visual Effects Academy Award, I find it difficult to believe that Derek Meddings' cornball models and miniatures were very impressive, even in 1979. They look like leftovers from his Thunderbirds children's show. The effects in Star Wars and Close Encounters outclass these by light years. All the reasons they don't like that are all the reasons I like that.
I didn't think it was that, but I mean, I was expecting to go into this like with, you know, I'm going to be comparing it to the special effects in Star Wars and Alien and other science fiction films that were out around that sort of time, and be thinking, God, this looks absolutely rubbish. But it looks amazing. They did.
Well, let's be honest,
bang up job.
The effects aren't as good as Alien and Star Wars, but that doesn't matter.
No,
it really doesn't matter.
The purpose of these films was to entertain, right? You know, I think at that time there was high inflation, you know, recession looming, all of that sort of stuff. And, you know, if this film did its job, which it obviously did, because you look at the take, how many people saw it when it was released, you know, to take people to another world and to take them out of, I mean, that's what movies are there to do. That's the magic of film. And, you know, if the criteria is a serious spy story that is grounded in reality, sure, this is one of the worst Bond films ever. But if the criteria is to entertain, this ticks all the freaking boxes. So, you know, I'm happy.
Yeah. This is the Bond film I would sit down and watch again straight away.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I can't believe I'm agreeing with you on that. I can't believe it.
Poor Phil.
Oh God, it's brilliant. I know, but you don't know, because he actually, when I spoke to him on the phone earlier, he hasn't seen it because he was sick as a dog. He can't focus on anything. So I said to him, just take your time. Hopefully he'll get to see it later on this week, and then I'll record with him next week. But I've got a feeling that he's going to change his mind. So it'll be really, really interesting. Brilliant, guys. Thank you so much. I'm like really, really looking forward to the next one now. I just want to keep this train running. So I think what we're going to do in December, you will have had 2 of these Bondathon episodes, and then in January we'll kind of start getting a little bit more frequent. Jon, Alex, have you both had fun?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. So. Thank you so much, both of you. I appreciate you. Thank you all so much for joining us once again. We do genuinely love making these 007 themed episodes. I really do love getting your feedback and your messages and notes after each one. Tailoring Talk is on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. You can support the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Rivera. If you love these entertainment themed episodes of Tailoring Talk, please do check out, you've guessed it, Play Pause Turn. Play Pause Turn is available wherever you like to get your shows, and you can also head to the website, which is
playpauseturn.show.
There we go. Jon, where can everybody find you online?
Well, I mean, who knows these days? Who knows?
Mastodon. It's all We're not doing Twitter anymore.
Twitter. No,
Twitter.
I'm on Mastodon and I'm on Instagram, and I have a few darknet websites as well. where you can buy
Apple TV Plus logins,
special pockets in for hiding money,
and that too. Exactly. Alex, where can everybody find you online? I've done this in completely wrong order.
You could just Google me. It's the easiest way, Alex Hansford, and just put me in, and I'll be the one. I'm just not a magician. There's a magician who has the same name.
Do you know what I'm going to do for a future episode?
Just put Alex Hansford, not the magician, and then see what comes up.
I'm going to get the magician on.
He's very good. He's very good. I've never met him, but he's good at sleight of hand.
Oh, he's quite young, isn't he?
A little bit younger than me, and yeah.
You're better looking, Alex.
I think the thing is, I'm more of a geek than him, so I've got all of the handles on all of the social media, and he's probably going, "Damn it, that bloody Alex Hansford."
Oh, brilliant. Well, this outro, which is totally my fault, I have to take responsibility, has messed my outro music that's going on right now. But we will be back next month to review For Your Eyes Only. Do take care of each other. We'll see you on the next episode of Tailoring Talk, or at least I will. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.